I still remember the sound of the storm that night, the kind of relentless downpour that makes the hospital windows tremble in their frames. I was halfway through a double shift, drinking lukewarm coffee in a staff lounge and thinking about how quiet things had been. In a trauma center like ours, quiet is never comforting. Quiet means a storm is gathering somewhere else. Quiet means something is coming. And then, everything changed. The overhead speaker crackled with the tone I'd learned to fear. Code vascular emergency, OR hold, incoming unstable patient. Even before they said the room number, I felt a tightness in my chest, a kind of instinct I'd learned to trust after 19 years of vascular surgery. Intuition that sometimes arrived faster than reason. I set my coffee down and walked into the hallway, the smell of antiseptic mixing with the metallic hum of fluorescent lights. The charge nurse jogged to greet me, her eyes wide. Male, mid-40s, collapsing circulation, left leg cold, no Doppler signals. They can't stabilize his pressures. Her voice dropped. "It's bad, Dr. Harlan." I didn't need convincing. As we hurried toward the trauma bay, the storm outside intensified, rain slamming against the windows like frantic fingertips. The corridors felt darker than usual, shadows stretching out under the emergency lights. In the distance, I could hear alarms, shrill, disorganized, desperate. When I stepped into the bay, the world narrowed instantly. Nurses, techs, and the trauma team were clustered around a man whose skin had taken on a pale, waxy tone. This was Aaron Mitchell. His clothes had been cut away, his chest rising in uneven, frightened breaths. The monitors flashed warnings that seemed to multiply by the second. "Pressure's dropping again," someone called. "Push another bolus." The room was a whirlwind of motion, syringes snapping open, gloves stretching, metal instruments clinking. But beneath it all, something felt off. Not clinically off, not the usual organized chaos of a failing vascular system. This was something deeper, a heaviness that settled over the room like fog. I moved to Aaron's side and placed my hand on his leg to check for a femoral pulse. I've felt cold limbs before. I've felt the stiffness of dying circulation, the chill that creeps upward when the body is losing its fight. But this was different. His skin felt cold in a way I still struggle to describe, as though the warmth had been pulled out long before we arrived. There was a stillness in that limb, an unsettling emptiness beneath the surface, as if his body had decided to surrender before we even touched him. I found myself staring at him longer than I should have, searching for something, anything, that made sense of the sensation creeping up my arm. "What do you think, doctor?" a nurse asked. I swallowed. "We need to move. Operating room now." But even as I spoke, alarms sounded again, sharper this time. His heart rate began to stutter like an engine misfiring. His oxygen saturation plummeted. The atmosphere, already tense, constricted further. The trauma attending leaned close to me. "Why is he deteriorating this fast? He was talking on arrival." I didn't have an answer. Blood clots can be unpredictable, but not like this. Not exploding through the vascular system with such ferocity that it left no time to react. I had seen hundreds of cases of ischemia, emboli, ruptures, but nothing like what was unfolding in front of me. The team moved Aaron onto a gurney, rushing him toward the elevator. As we pushed through the hallway, the storm growled overhead. Thunder vibrated through the building. And in that strange blend of natural chaos and medical crisis, I felt a chill run through me, a whisper of dread I couldn't explain. I had no idea then how much darker the night would become, or how one patient, one moment, would stay with me for years. But as those elevator doors closed, sealing us inside that obstruct, but not like this, not in real time, not so fast that it seemed to outrun our attempts to intervene. "Get suction," I said, my voice tighter than I intended. The tech obeyed, but within seconds the suction canister was filled with dense clots, far more than should have accumulated in such a short time. Another nurse glanced at me, her eyes wide above her mask. She didn't say a word, but she didn't have to. Everyone in that room felt the same thing. Something was off script, unpredictable, unnerving. I attempted a thrombectomy, trying to pull the clots free, but every time I cleared a section, new ones formed behind it. It was like trying to dig through sand while the tide kept filling the hole. Aaron's vessels weren't behaving like vessels in distress. They were behaving like a system in free fall. For the audience, we take a moment to explain the basics. Thrombosis is the formation of blood clots. When it becomes uncontrolled, it can shut down circulation, starve tissues of oxygen, and cause catastrophic damage. Normally, we use anticoagulants, medications that thin the blood, or perform mechanical removals to restore flow. But nothing about Aaron's physiology was responding as expected. At one point, as I worked to reopen the artery, the scrub nurse whispered, "Doctor, it's thickening as soon as it hits the tray." She wasn't exaggerating. The blood that touched the metal surface began to gelatinize almost instantly, congealing into shapes so fast that none of us could fully comprehend what we were seeing. Monitors beeped rapidly, alarms stacking on top of each other in a dissonant chorus. Oxygen saturation dropping, heart rate unstable, blood pressure faltering. It felt like watching someone sink in quicksand. Every second mattered, and every second the situation grew worse. I tried to maintain control, to stay focused on what I could manage, but in the back of my mind, a cold realization took root. I was no longer battling a complication. I was battling a cascade, a runaway process that no medication, no technique, no amount of experience could fully halt. As the clotting continued to spread upward, reaching the thigh, then the abdomen, a chill settled in my chest. I felt helpless in a way I rarely feel in an operating room. And as I looked down at Aaron's still, pale body, a single thought echoed in my mind. It was as if his body had decided to shut itself down from the inside out. In every surgeon's career, there are moments that define you, moments that alter the way you look at life, at medicine, at the fragile threads that keep us here. I've had my share of close calls, miracles, losses, and triumphs. But nothing prepared me for the moment that would replay in my mind for years after Aaron's case. It happened in a window of time so small, I sometimes wonder if it really occurred the way I remember it. But then the memory rises, vivid and cold, and I know it did. We had brought Aaron back from the operating room after the first intervention. His lead had been opened, flushed, debrided, the major arteries cleared, but we all knew it wasn't enough. The clotting had moved too quickly, too aggressively. Even as the team stabilized him, there was a tension in the room that felt almost physical, as if the walls were holding their breath. I stood at the foot of the bed, reviewing his critical labs with the intensivist. His platelets were dropping, fibrinogen unstable, D-dimer skyrocketing. It looked like a full-body clotting storm, a kind of internal wildfire that medicine could name but not fully tame. The monitors beeped steadily, their rhythm fragile but holding. And then something shifted. It was small at first. Medical procedure, but because everyone is still haunted by the words he said, they're waiting. This section ends at the crescendo of tension, the surgical team fighting desperately, sweat dripping under masks, alarms blaring, as Aaron's life hangs by a thread. Whether they can save him, or whether something else is pulling him away, remains the question propelling the story forward. This section slows the pace, not to relieve tension, but to deepen it. The narrative becomes more introspective, more atmospheric, as we explore what Aaron later described after being resuscitated. The surgeon narrator recounts the moment Aaron regained consciousness days later, fragile but alive, long enough to speak, long enough to reveal something that would haunt the surgeon far more than the operation ever did. We begin in the ICU, several days post-operation. Aaron is weak, pale, speaking in faint whispers, but unmistakably lucid. Wires cover him, machines cradle his breathing. The vascular surgeon sits beside his bed, expecting confusion, trauma, fog. Instead, Aaron asks a quiet question. Did I die? The surgeon explains clinically but gently that he coded twice, once in the operating room, once in recovery. They brought him back both times. Aaron closes his eyes, tears forming, not in fear, but in recognition. I thought so, he murmurs, because I wasn't here. His voice is shaky but steady enough to describe it. He says when his heart stopped, he felt a pull, like being drawn through a dark corridor, not a tunnel of light, but something colder, heavier, like a place that wasn't meant for living people. He says he saw shapes, figures standing still, watching him, not reaching, not guiding, just waiting. The surgeon tries to reassure him with medical explanations, hypoxia, fragmented consciousness, dying brain activity, but Aaron shakes his head. No, I've had dreams, I've been sedated before. This wasn't that, this was real. He describes hearing voices, not speaking words, but murmuring like distant whispers echoing underwater. He couldn't see faces, only silhouettes, but he recognized something in them, a kind of ancient stillness, a patience that made his chest tighten even as he spoke about it. Then he gives the detail that chills the surgeon to the bone. He says that as he drifted closer to them, he realized they weren't waiting for him. They were waiting for permission. And he felt deeply that if he took one more step toward them, he wouldn't come back. In those final seconds of his near-death moment, he says he heard someone call his name, not the surgical team, not his mother's voice, something else, familiar yet distant, almost like hearing your own voice from far away. It pulled him backward, away from the figures, away from that cold place, until suddenly he felt the violent snap of his body returning, the defibrillator pads, the chest compressions, the chaos of the OR. Aaron shares all this with a trembling certainty, no theatrics, no embellishment, just truth, raw, fragile, whispered truth. The surgeon listens, knowing the medical explanations, yet unable to dismiss the sincerity in Aaron's eyes. This section ends on a heavy, contemplative note, the surgeon realizing that whatever Aaron saw, real or neurological, changed him. And it would soon change the surgeon too, in ways he never anticipated. This section closes the documentary with a blend of emotional resonance, unresolved mystery, and the quiet heaviness that follows medical professionals long after a case ends. The tone is reflective, somber, and deeply human. It should feel like the narrator is speaking directly to the viewer, not as a surgeon, but as someone who has been changed forever by what he witnessed. The section begins with the surgeon recounting the final days of Aaron's life. Though the team fought relentlessly, the damage from the clotting cascade was irreversible. Aaron survived long enough to say goodbye to his mother, to thank the nurses, and to tell the surgeon